welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here with episode 380 something. I don't know where we're at, but I have a wonderful guest with me, the host and owner of the new show, Hunting Beauties. This is an absolutely wonderful show on YouTube. Just finished its first season. You guys got to check it out. And here we have Angela Kaatz. Angela, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you about the show. Season 1 was amazing. And I can't wait to see what you have in store for us next. But the obvious question, it's obvious where it comes from. You've had a whole history throughout your life with paranormal activity. I have lived in a haunted house. I've lived in a haunted apartment. And my whole family has had a history of paranormal activity. I worked in a haunted restaurant. So
wow.
I'm a little familiar with the grounds that you walk.
Right? That's pretty awesome. So you couldn't get away from it, could you?
No, and that's okay. So let's just start there, because that's kind of the thing, right? As people, we tend to be, well, we used to be in a self-preservation mode. We would avoid danger. We would be careful turning, before we pulled out onto a street to make sure there's no oncoming traffic. Now nobody gives a shit. They just do whatever. But it seems like the natural thing would be to stay out of harm's way, and you are just heading right for it.
Oh yeah, straight for it. Straight for it. I hear danger and I'm heading straight to it.
Well, I think that it takes a certain personality to be willing to sit in the dark and try and have conversations with things that, if they turned violent for whatever reason, which is not common, but it does happen, there's not much you could do.
Exactly. Like, how are you going to fight a ghost? I mean, like I said, I think we mentioned earlier, throw baby powder, then you can find them.
Yeah. And it's going to stick to them, right? Because that's how it works.
Sure. Right.
But I think that's the thing. It's like it is. I understand why people are terrified of them and why people don't want to believe that they exist, because of that very thing. Because what you can hide in a basement if there's a tornado. You have at least a
Right.
reasonable chance of survival. If a ghost wants to attack you, they're just going to do it.
That's it. And it's happened to me. I've been scratched, I've been pushed, I've been choked, and, unfortunately not on camera. So at least I could show everybody. But, it sounds like an awful thing to say, but I always say, if something's going to happen to me, at least let it be on camera so people could have evidence. But it's
Right.
so hard to prove those things other than seeing scratch marks. Like,
Mhm.
people can see that. But if you don't see it as it's happening, there's a lot of disbelievers in the field, which I expect. Like, I totally expect that. So I usually don't get offended as long as they're not shaking their finger at me and going, "You're a liar." And I was like, "How do you
Yeah.
know?" It's like, we have lots of people there.
Mhm. Well, and I think that's a tough thing in today's world, because as AI is getting better and better, and it's easier to create things that look super realistic and aren't, except for hands. Hands and fire, it doesn't seem to be able to do well with those. But uh, it is a tough sell to get people to understand that you actually are genuine. What you catch, you catch.
Right. The only way I've been able to take a lot of skeptics away is, for a while when I was doing research for the show, is I dove headfirst into the paranormal world, because that is a different type of community that's out there.
Yeah.
And I needed to find out, what do people like about shows? What don't they like about shows? What do they want to see? And if the concept I had was even going to land, if
Mhm.
this was something that people even cared about. Because I certainly didn't want to go running around and doing this and filming and spend all of my life savings and then no one cared. I'm like, I would have been like, oh, devastated. So I'm glad everybody's been very receptive and loving it, because I want people to feel like they're there. I want them to feel like they're experiencing it with us. Because, like you said, people are scared of the unknown.
Mhm.
So at
Yeah.
least you can watch it from your comfy couch, bundled up in your blanket, and you could be like, I wouldn't do that, but you can't stop watching.
Well, and people are scared, including your co-hosts. They do not. They've gotten better. They're strong people, but boy, you put them in that element, especially your last episode, Demons Road.
Oh, yeah.
That was a tough one for them.
That was the coup de grace. That's what they get for wandering off. That was the rule of the show, is don't wander off, because especially Demon's Road is unpredictable. I had did my research for a long, long time with people telling me, I saw this, I experienced that. and people that sent me pictures, videos. So I was getting confirmation that there was a lot to be afraid of there. And the first time we filmed there, it was mostly drunk college kids were the biggest thing to be afraid of because they
Sure.
were out there screaming in the woods, trying to prank us. And I'm like, no, come on. Like 3 a.m, these kids were bored. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever been to Huntsville, but there's no lights. No one has porch lights on, and there's no noise. There's not leaves crunching. Like, I mean, it's the woods. You should hear animals, something, nothing. It's dead silent. And then
Mhm.
here comes these teenagers. So they're bored. I can't blame them for having fun. We met a lot of interesting people and
Yeah.
a lot of people that just came to visit during the daytime. I mean, once the sun sets, totally different. Totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing a show. You're serious and you're trying to get footage, and it doesn't help when people, I mean, if they want to chat with you before or after, that's fine. But in the middle of recording, that's very frustrating, I'm sure.
Yes.
Um, that is an interesting thing, though, that you're not hearing animals. And come to think of it, I didn't hear crickets. I didn't hear anything.
It was dead silent until we were doing the Estes method. And the
Mhm.
strangest thing is what we've actually concluded is that when she was speaking and saying words, she said, we walk for hours, we can't talk. And then suddenly we hear like marching, and then we're surrounded. And the crew is trying to hold the camera and looking everywhere, going, do you hear that? There's no humans that's out there. We had the roads blocked off at that point. We were smarter this time. No one was out there. And
Mm.
we heard human footsteps surrounding us, and we didn't see anything. And she was talking about that we walked for hours. It had to have been some kind of cavalry, like back in the day. It had
Yeah.
to have been some sort of battle or cavalry because who else would march for hours and then suddenly surround us? So
Right.
that's the only sound we heard, and then the baby crying. No one has been able to fully confirm what that is. I've heard theories, and I'm not down with any of them because I wasn't about to go in the woods to find it.
Well, it's probably one of the last things that you would expect you would hear, and just coming out of nowhere. And especially, I think, didn't the voice come through saying baby or something about a baby right at that time?
Yes, I heard it in the distance, and then suddenly she goes, "Baby," and I went,
Mhm.
"No, no, no." That's the one time you see me freak out on the episode because I've heard of skinwalkers. I'm
Mhm.
hearing about people saying fairies. Like, there's so many theories out there, and if there's no noise, there's no baby. There can't be a baby, so
Right.
something else is making that noise, and I don't have an explanation. It's the fear of the unknown is what will get you, and sitting
Absolutely.
there in the pitch dark, I'm like, "Oh my god," freaking out.
Well, and that's the other thing. I think it's kind of like if you watch a show like The Amazing Race, okay, and you're seeing these little snippets of people's day, you're not really understanding that these people have been running for 20 hours. They're in places they don't know. You don't understand the depth of their exhaustion. When people watch your show, I don't think they get that what you
I
see is pitch black, because we're looking through that night vision
Right.
and we're seeing everything, and we think you're seeing everything, but you're not. You don't see anything.
Nothing. Like, we can barely see. Even the camera crew has to be as brave as us. Those who are working sound have to be brave as us. If
Mm.
you'll see on TikTok, one of the girls who was holding the boom mic says it doesn't help when the person holding the boom mic takes off running and got scared.
That's
'Cause
very true.
I made a comment about the sound being terrible on that, and she's like, "I'm so sorry," because she took off running. You hear everybody screaming, "James, James, James." That's my husband.
Mm.
So they're all screaming for him because he's not fazed by any of this. Like, he could see something and he's not fazed. That's just nothing has fazed him yet. The jail was the closest to where he goes, "That's interesting." That one got him a little bit because the
Mm.
jail cell slammed, and you have to physically, like, I wish I would have went back and debunked it. You have to physically push, pull, and come around and slam that cell. Like, you can't, it's not just going to the wind and it's gonna close. It's heavy, and we're
Yeah.
all filming in one spot, and then you hear wham, and we're like, "Oh!" You hear voices talking, and
Mm.
unfortunately, unless you have mics planted everywhere, you're not gonna catch some of that. And who's to say
Yeah.
that we'd be able to catch it anyways? That's why I guess a lot of the ghost hunters are doing the EVPs are a little bit better to
Mhm.
capture because we're
Yeah.
hearing things and it's right there, but it's not on the camera. It's like, "Oh, come on," because 'cause we're hearing it. So, like I said, everybody said, fix the sound for season 2. I was like, I'm working on it.
Well, okay, and I want to make sure that we talk about the flashlights because that's a really interesting thing. But let's talk about the sound a little bit because for every EVP recorder that you leave in a jail cell or in a hospital room or wherever you're going to be, you're also talking what 6 hours more of detailed listening. You could put it on a computer, you could boost the signal so you can kind of look at it visually and maybe narrow down some of your time, but you're talking a lot of hours now that you're adding for every episode. So where you're at now, how long does it take you to put an episode together from the time that you come back with the footage, from like, let's say from when you start reviewing everything and assembling the episode? That's got to be a lot of hours involved.
A lot of hours. If we had more people doing the editing, then it would be a lot shorter. But we were also filming podcasts in between there too. And I was, getting my feet wet doing that. So we were editing podcasts, going out filming. Then you have to go back and get B-roll. We're trying to do all of that in 24 hours, B-roll, everything. So Hotel Icon, what you'll see is we went there at lunchtime and didn't leave until 6 a.m. the next morning, trying to get all the footage we possibly could. And luckily, they were the nicest people on the planet. Like, they did not embrace any of this until we went there. And now they're advertising that they're haunted after us.
Wow.
And I went,
Well,
wait a minute, you didn't even tell me that ghost story. I was like, you could have aired that because it was one more thing that I could have done. But they were, when we first called them, they're like, I don't think it's haunted. And then we went and started talking to the staff. They go, oh, yeah, we've seen stuff. So I always get confirmation. I don't like just rumors or it's rumored that so and so. I mean, I'll say it's rumored if it is, but I would rather someone saw something, someone experienced something so that we're also not wasting a lot of time either. Like if it's
yeah.
heavy activity, we're there. I want to see stuff.
I mean, there's some places I think you could probably go without researching, like the Queen Mary, because it's got such a huge history already and things like that. But yeah, especially for local places, because you're also going to have the businesses that are like, hey, let's get in on this action and see if we can get some customers out of this, especially like your more rural places that don't get a lot of traffic. I don't blame them, but it's
I think it's great. It used
yeah.
to be, I think people were deterred by it. And I think now it's a selling point,
Mhm.
almost like saying that here, come stay here in the haunted room. And you can charge twice as much in the haunted room. And
Yeah.
you can say, come to this place. Like the Galvez is massively haunted, but they won't let us film without them keeping our footage. So we didn't want to give up our rights to that footage. I've seen other videos there and as a medium, I didn't pick up a lot, which not to say it's not haunted because the girls initially before the show started, that's what inspired me is they had their cell phones catching stuff that I went, that's you can't explain that. And then their
Mhm.
fridge doors would open and close and like they
Right.
had nonstop activity and they were not into this until I said, hey, would you want to do this on a show?
Well, and the other challenge is too is that, okay, maybe the day that you went there, there wasn't a lot of activity on that day. Maybe the
Right.
ghosts weren't around or they were, somewhere else where you weren't, or they were avoiding you because they didn't know what to make of you. Maybe they didn't
Exactly.
want to be found. So there's so much that goes into it because you can go to a location, you're not necessarily going to get any footage.
Exactly. That's the challenge. I think a lot of I talked about this in my latest update on TikTok was that most ghost hunting shows have at least 7 to 10 days of filming. So they're wearing the same clothes over and over for continuity. People don't realize that. They think they just went in 24 hours, but they're building up that trust with spirits by being there that long and they're more likely to capture more activity. And even then, sometimes it can be minimal, even with 7 days being there. But that's something that I also talked to people from different communities and other people filming, and they told me, they're like, man, you could sit here for 2 days and get nothing. And I'm like, oh, I don't have 2 days.
And that's frustrating because you're putting so much into every episode. There's the travel time and the expense and the exhaustion and putting everything else you're doing on hold for that time. You can't just put your life on hold for a week every time you want to do an episode.
Exactly, because everyone has jobs. Like I run a full service marketing and media company with my husband. So we are taking care of clients, and this is 24/7 that we are doing this. Our lives are put into that. And then when I started the Ghost Hunting Beauties, that is a second career. That is, not that is not a hobby. That's what I've told people. It's like I take it personally because it's not a hobby. I'm not just doing this for fun. Like this is my life. And this
Right.
is I want to inspire people. I want people to, whatever they didn't like with ghost shows before that they'll like here, because we're also not as scary as some of them, although Demon's Road had its moments.
Yes, it did. Well, I think too, you have a different approach. You don't approach like there's some shows that try to attack and provoke the ghosts.
Oh
And then
God.
there's other shows that are just like they don't interact at all. They just wait for the ghosts. Like you guys are really friendly and welcoming, trying
Yeah.
to draw that energy out, which I don't think I've really seen that uh genuinely. I think I've seen that as a trick or an
Right.
effort, but I don't like it's just who you guys are.
Definitely, especially S.P.I has so long of a history of doing this already, and whenever I met them, that was also part of the vetting process of working with them, is they were so kind. Like, they were almost like spiritual advisors to
Mhm.
spirits, like, they were going in there and helping families, so they're helping spirits and they're helping families. They're like, "Hey, we're not getting along, so therefore it's a, spiritual disturbance," and they're like, "How do we help?" So, I mean, some spirits were wanting to cross over, if that's what you believe. There are some spirits that were wanting to communicate, wanted their stories told. Everyone has differing views on that. So I'm always very sensitive to that when people talk, because, there are some ghost hunting shows that don't believe in crossing over at all. But
Mhm.
I've actually helped multiple spirits cross over. I had to be trained. I didn't just go out there and here, I don't know what I'm doing. Who knows where I'd send them off to?
Right,
But
yeah.
S.P.I, that was the whole point, is S.P.I comes in with their professional, and they showed us what to do, what not to do. Like, you can see the mistakes in, like, I think episode 1. They're like, "Never sit on the bed," and we're all on the bed.
Right.
And
And you
so
guys integrate so well together because they come at it from a more experienced, almost this is our job perspective, and you guys come in and you bring that warmth to it to I think you guys complement each other very, very well.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Huh. I'm
We definitely wanna
curious. I'm sorry?
I said we definitely wanna do that. That's definitely
Oh,
what
yeah.
we're
I'm the restaurant that I worked in that was haunted, turns out that the foundation was made from sandstone, and sandstone is known to have recording properties and
wow.
can play sounds, back at times. But obviously, when you're out in a field, there's probably not a lot of sandstone out in the fields of Texas. So it seems like, that would be a little more concerning because that would be a more active thing as opposed to something that you're seeing that's just repeating.
Right.
Um, has does it feel any different if it seems like it's a residual haunting versus something that's interactive? Have you noticed any or have you experienced any residuals?
I think when at Demon's Road, when the soldiers were surrounding us, that part of that felt residual. And then it was mixed with spirits that had just been running around there for who knows how long. Like, to me, there's something that predates that cemetery because it used to be a church. So it was
Oh,
Martha's Chapel there. And it was, a lot of Methodist community there. And the child that I saw dressed in a lot older garb. And to me, it's like I'm terrible with time periods, but it's like I can see it and then I try to communicate and go, they're wearing this kind of hat and this, it reminded me of one of those little orphan movies where they have the little hats. I can't even
oh,
probably
right, yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
That's what I was seeing. So to me, when the soldiers surrounded us, that felt residual, like they
Mhm.
were back in battle. But with other spirits, that one felt like it was just running around. And of course, on one of the tapings that I'm not sure, I don't think that one made it onto the screen, was the little kid runs over and grabs the antenna, keeps going off. And then I was so tired, I think 2 or 3 in the morning, and I said, "You better stop that." And they ran off, never came back, no more activity. I said, "Oh, God." It was just so crazy.
Oh, well, but that shows that that's more of a live situation as opposed to residual.
Right.
Let me ask you this, 'cause I think about hopefully a long time from now, but when I die, I really wanna stay here and watch everything that's going on and not
Right.
like, I wanna get the hell out of here.
Right.
I can't imagine wanting to stick around. What do you think it is that keeps them here? I would imagine it's probably a variety of things, but
Oh, yeah. One of the number one things I've seen, and it may even fall into a paranormal cliche, but people who commit suicide tend to stay. It's usually because they're so tormented in life that when they choose to take that option, or if there's mental illness or something that leads them down that dark path, there's something unresolved. So they stay. They don't cross over generally. I don't think that they can't cross over. I think it's just there's something like let's say a heartbreak, or that someone was torturing them, or something terrible is happening in their life that keeps them here. So I've seen that a lot with suicides because it seems to be really common. I go, how did you pass away, if you don't mind sharing? And a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, I took my life, so I can't go up there. So it's almost like their mindset is stuck here, thinking
Oh.
that I can't cross over. And so they just stay and wonder. Like, I can't tell you how many spirits I've told that you're good. You can go. And they're like, oh, okay. And then gone. So it
And that's kind of
goes.
sad though that there isn't something that comes out and says, "Hey, I'm gonna transition you," because that's the, I guess, more the biblical thing is that your
Right.
relatives are waiting for you and they'll guide you in or whatever. And to find out that there's not going to happen, that sucks.
Yeah, that's why a lot of kids get stuck down here. It shocks me how many children we come across. That one's the one that's always really rough. Like, first of all, ghost kids scare me. And then second of all, it's I feel sad because once I get past the initial fear, I go, I try to help them, pass over if I can. Or, sometimes they're just kids and they're just playing. They don't really get the concept that they're no longer in a living vessel, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that seems weird because I would think if I went into a store and I can't flag anybody down, I can't pick up an object, or I put it on the counter and no one's there to bring me up, or they're not looking at me and I'm just standing there screaming at them, I would have to think maybe something's not right anymore.
Right.
You know?
Be surprised. We come
Yeah.
across this all the time. It's really interesting. That's a really good question though, by the way, because
Thank
that's
you.
that's what I come across a lot was it's a belief system, or feeling like there's things that they haven't said or done. But then by that point, those other people, like I say, let's say if it's a heartbreak, that person's already passed on and now you're still here.
Mhm.
So I always say, man, if you could cross over, it's like, just do that. It's like, I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
stay here either. It's like this planet gets worse and worse by the day on some levels. So I'm like, no, thank you.
Mhm.
Bye.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like as soon as I'm done, I'm like, all right, great. Let's find out what's next. Watch, then you'll find me someday on a road and
Oh, man.
we'll be having this talk. Remember when I said that on the show? Um, I want to ask you about the flashlight because I'm a little confused by a couple things on this. So you have the flashlight, you unscrew it so that the battery does not touch and it's off, and you ask them to turn it on so that are they physically turning the flashlight, or are they making the connection between the battery and the front end of the flashlight? Or do
I
we
think
know?
I think they're physically turning it at that point. Like, I
Okay.
think it's always hard to see because we're usually in the dark when they're
Mhm.
there, and so I usually see the flashlight come on or off, but I've seen them slightly move at times, so I'm figured they're using the energy to slightly turn it enough to turn it on, but they leave them loose so that they're able to do so. But when there's some of them that when they get the hang of it, it's on, off, like they have it set. It's pretty it was interesting since the first time I've done anything like that. I was like, that's different. But the reason SPI does that, they explained, is because that is one of the things that you can't sit there and come in and go, that's fake. Because, like, how else, if no one is near it and touching it, you can't have a remote. You can't do
Yeah.
something externally to make it do that. Same with the cat balls, is that we stay far back from them. And if we bump them or do something, we're like, that's me, that's me, that's me.
Yeah,
Cat balls are my favorite.
and I was saying earlier when we were talking, I really like that you guys say this shadow is the sound man, this is the cameraman, this is because people would just be jumping at every little thing that they see and writing in and going, "Oh my God, did you see the shadow?"
See, and there's people that will leave it to be ambiguous, and I totally get it. I know people need to get viewers. With
Mhm.
us, I would rather debunk because I don't want people, if they're gonna message me, I'm a very blunt and honest person. I'll be like, "No, that was so and so." Like, we had, I think the boom mic crashed, and I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Come on." And it's right when all the activity was kicking up. And I can never say that wasn't paranormal or was. So I just go, it crashed. Sorry, I can't tell you that could have been a spirit knocking it over. I
Right?
don't know. I tend to make communication with the spirits before I actually go film, and I have found that's the only way my stuff doesn't get erased. because
Yeah.
all of our stuff was getting erased.
Oh,
Cameras broke, all the cards wiped. We had no explanation. We were writing the ghost stop people. No kidding. Like we were writing emails going, this is not working. And they're like, oh, yeah. They're like, I hate to tell you this, but this must be your first time. It's like, they will erase your cards. Try to use this card or use this, because we go with the weather conditions, this. But sure enough, before I filmed in Old Town Spring, I did a spirit session. And I think I recorded it. I can't remember, but I know that they said, we're going to burn your film. And I went, oh, I was like, okay. I was
that's
like, please,
polite.
I was like, please don't, please don't.
Well, and there is an irony to the fact that, everything that you're doing is on battery and they will often drain batteries to use energy to manifest. And then you can't catch them because they drained your battery.
Exactly. Either that or they're going to drain me. And then I'm like this at the end of the night.
Right. Yeah. And then telling children, go away.
Yes.
Um, so with I remember there was one of the sessions, I think it was Amy Lee, is that her name, from S.P.I? So she was sitting there with the flashlight and she said, if you are a child, turn the light on. And then I think nothing happened. And then she thought, okay, they've gone away. But what if it wasn't a child? What if it was an adult that was like, hey, I'm not turning the light on because I'm not a child, but I'm still here to
Right.
communicate. Like, it's a real tricky thing when you only have yes or no.
Right. Very tricky on that. That's why I like the spirit box better so
Mhm.
that I can usually get words. The problem is that you're so hyped up on adrenaline and surviving off coffee, tea, whatever you can to stay awake.
Mhm.
Usually, most of us come off of working since 5 a.m. Like, so
Yeah.
we're really tired and we're trying to muster up the energy to communicate. So, even in the hotel icon, we were getting things and we ended up shutting it off, going, I guess we didn't get anything until I went back and looked at the footage. And I went, we got names, we got this, we got that. Because my husband is the debunker because he's one of those very heavy skeptic. That's why I tell people I welcome skeptics to my show because I'm married to one. And he keeps me very grounded because he'll go, no, that was this. No, I definitely think it was that. And so I know if he's thinking that, people who watch it are thinking the same thing.
Sure.
So he'll tell me, just like when we were decoding some of what the spirit box was saying, we had to slow the audio down. So
Mhm.
we didn't show all of that, but we went back when we were reviewing evidence, slowed it down. And I went, oh, that's clear. And it's like a little kid at Christmas. You're like, yay.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, what we really want is the truth. I mean, it's not like going to a magician and you know that everything is a very staged illusion, but you want to believe that that's real. There's some part of that. With this, I think I'd rather know the truth.
Yes,
Was this a real event or was this, coincidence? Was there a camera, like some issue with their flare or whatever?
exactly.
But the one with the spirit box, I think the one question I have, and this might be hard to answer, I don't know what the audio word for this is, which is really weird because I'm an audio engineer,
Yeah.
but pareidolia. So the idea of seeing something like seeing a rabbit in a cloud, because
Mhm.
that's a similar shape, and so our minds go, "That's a rabbit." I
Right.
assume there's some audio term for that. How much of that do you think comes into play? Because it could be there, it could not be there. There's got to be an element of that.
Oh, yeah, there definitely could be. The first time I ever used the spirit box was the SB7. And I did a session to where it was just goofy me sitting in bed, laughing, trying to. My house is always chaos. I have animals. I have an adult child who loves to burst in and go, what are you doing?
Mhm.
So there's never no distractions. So I'm using that. And usually my first mind is, is that what that said? Is that what? So I record and I
Mhm.
have to go back and I definitely go through and analyze. And then I usually put it through two or three more people. And without telling them what it says, then try to see if I can get a different perspective. Like that way, it's not just me trying to create a word because I want to hear it so bad. And
Right.
sometimes answers are delayed, which there was the answers that they answered later, I think, in Demons Road of how many were
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, crap." In the editing process, we have to take hours of ghost hunting and condense it down to here. So there may have been that question too with Amy asking about was it an adult? It probably was, but we had to condense everything down.
Right. Yeah. That's why I was curious because she's pretty smart and I would think
Oh,
that she
yeah.
would really know how to work her way around that. But the way that it came out, I was like, that just kind of took me by surprise a little bit. So I figured it was probably an editing thing. You have been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. I love talking to you. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
Always here.
But I have a question for you now that you had mentioned that somebody on another show gave you a quiz. So I'll throw a question at you that popped into my head and see what you
All right.
think. Forget politics, forget religion, forget money, forget location issues. If you could do an investigation anywhere on the planet, round or flat,
Wonderful.
where would you want to do one? Just, and again, no expense problems, no travel issues, nothing. Just you got a free pass to go somewhere. Where would you go?
100% I would go to a Scottish castle because I feel like
Ooh.
that they preserve history over there better than we do.
Mhm.
And their history is older than American history. So
True.
I would love to go over there and to experience, like, imagine all the places that are haunted here. If it's been haunted for 300 years, that one's haunted for 3,000 years, something like
Yeah.
that. Like exponential amounts. You can go to Stonehenge, which has been there how long? So just
Mhm.
kind of throwing it out there. People are going to go, yeah, it hasn't been there for 3,000 years. I'm like, just hypothetically saying,
Right.
overseas, there are monuments and things that have been there that predate most things that we've had over here. So I would love to put my hands on that castle to just experience it. We
Mhm.
had my spiritual advisor just came back from Egypt and he said, I'm not even gifted. And I felt things. So I was like, oh, that would be so neat to go to Egypt too. That would be another checklist.
Yeah, I would say Giza would be mine. Like the Pyramid of Giza, I think would probably be an unbelievably fascinating, or Easter Island. I think, that would be another place where it might a lot happened there, a lot of history there. So there might be some interesting things. And again, a very old, long history. There's so many places, but yeah, I didn't expect Scottish Castle, but I definitely see where you're coming from on that. Yeah, for sure.
That's how I'll know. Like, if you see me filming an episode in a Scottish castle, you can say, "We've made it." That's how I know I've made it. If I'm sitting in a Scottish castle, I will be very excited.
Right. No, that would be fantastic. I will keep my fingers crossed for that. Are you able so season one just ended. Are you able to tell us when we should expect season two, or is that not decided yet?
Season 2 will be airing back October next year. In
Okay.
between, like, people are like, "Oh, I have to wait a year." It's like, well, in between, we're still doing investigations. So we'll show behind the scenes for different places. Like, we have an investigation coming up in 3 weeks. We've got investigation coming up then in January, and then we are heavily checking off and scouting and getting history on places that we want to go. We have 2 new cast members coming on, which is
Cool.
super exciting. 2 new girls who are extremely excited to be on here. So their enthusiasm is going to keep everything fresh because I know there's
Yeah.
so much we've already done, but
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to new ideas, new places. I want to try something that people haven't tried before. And I'm running out of ideas because so many people have tried everything. I'm like, send me new things.
Right. Well, and yeah, because there have been a lot of other shows that have covered a lot of the more popular places. But I think what you're doing is more interesting because, okay, to go to Winchester Mystery House, yeah, absolutely. That's a great place to go and investigate. But you're also picking places I've never heard of. And I
Oh,
find that interesting because I'm learning histories on places I never even knew existed.
cool.
There are areas I haven't seen before. So I like that you're exploring what to me at least is unexplored territory.
Oh, thank you. Now the Yorktown one is a popular one. It has been done by so many people, but every experience I've seen with people going to Yorktown has been different.
Mhm.
So we don't know what we're going to get. The reason I think we get a lot of activity a lot of times is we do have 2 full-blown mediums, which would be me and Lynette, and
Right.
we pick up on things. I think things can channel through to us more, so we're more likely, since we are gifted, to pick up on things. That's kind of my
Right.
theory so far. So I want to get down to the truth of Yorktown. There, if you look up on the internet, it's the exact same story copied and pasted to the word.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sitting there going, everyone's saying 2,000 people died. I'm like, how do you know that? And it's talking about a doctor, and it's like, I want to know about this doctor. Show me a magazine article or a newspaper article where this guy is there. Like,
Well,
I
and
want.
I think too, if you were to go to some of the other popular places, like you could do the Alamo in Texas. Just within Texas alone, there's tons of places. But I think the fact that, like I said earlier, that energy that you bring, that welcome, inviting, it's okay to talk to us, that charm that you guys have, and I'm going to assume that your two cast members fit into that because I don't think you'd work with people that
100%.
didn't. Um, I think that alone could bring out results that other people aren't getting.
True, very true. Because
And of
we're
course,
very
timing.
welcome.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
one episode that we need to still put together, but we didn't get to go back and finish. Well, I mean, the ghost hunting part was finished, but
Mhm.
all of the B-roll wasn't finished. But we had an episode of true crime meets the paranormal, which was very interesting because we knew the history of the house and the different things, and we didn't expect the answers we got from the
Ooh.
gentleman who had a message for the person who killed him. Which I'm like, "Do I go
Ooh.
deliver this?" I was like, "Should we film it? Like, what?" And then people are like, "No." Everyone's been telling me, "No." They're like, "This guy's gonna come out and kill you. It's not worth it."
Well, that's an interesting thing because I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to put yourself in real life harm's way. I mean, you're putting yourself in harm's way with the ghost, like we talked about, but this is a different, especially going to a known killer and going, "Hey, by the way, I know you
Right.
murdered
That
somebody.
was kind of
Just wanted
messy.
to let you know." And then their reception of, I mean, can you imagine from their perspective what
Yeah,
that would be like? That would just be insane. I mean, the first thing they do is dismiss you because they're not going to want to think it's real.
right.
Oh,
Once
then
I
then
tell him though, he'll know. He'll know 100% because he
that's
told us
true.
stuff that it's not reported anywhere. That's why I like to do heavy research. And
Mhm.
and sometimes we'll go into places not knowing anything at all and see if it matches the research. Like we've done that too to be able to confirm. Like
Mhm.
I've had I didn't know about the Conjuring house until recently. And people go, "How did you not know about that?" I said, "I have purposely avoided anything with the Conjuring because it has scared the life out of me. And
Mhm.
now I'm so curious. Like I'm
Yeah.
morbidly curious. I'm like, see, I'm running towards the danger. I'm like, oh, I heard Zach Bagans got sick there. And I was like, I'll be fine. Right. Like, send me in.
Well, one more thing I want to tell you before we wrap up is I want to thank you for the way that you stream your content. And
Oh,
obviously, you being in media, you'll appreciate this. You do not overload us with, "Hey, I've got a video. Hey, I've got a video. Hey, I've got a video." You give us a nice stream of, "Oh, there's a new video. Let me go watch it." I don't, there's so many people that are just like, "I have to put constant content out there," and you don't. It's,
I
it's
appreciate that.
it's good bite-sized stuff too, because the episodes, they go really fast. They do not seem like they're as long as they are. But then when you do your behind the scenes videos, especially your first haunting experience videos, I really liked those because that
Oh,
gave me a kind of a sense of who everyone is that I'm looking at and where they're at. But yeah, you guys are really doing a great job with the amount of content that you're putting it out. You're not making me forget you, but you're not overloading me. It's like right in that sweet spot.
oh, thank you. We appreciate that. TikTok has probably the most content. And that was the one that we put, like I said, I don't overwhelm people. I mean, there's times that we're real people. We have real lives. There's times that I just want to forget social media and just try to forget everything. Like we went to Miami, took our trip, and honestly, I didn't post anything till I got home because I wanted to enjoy my trip. I
Yeah,
wanted to be present in the moment. And I recorded things because I want to remember them. I mean, who
right.
knows, I'll be an 80-year-old lady and forget I even went to Miami.
Well, yeah, and you deserve it. Everybody deserves time away from even when you're doing what you love, it can have its tedious moments like sitting there and editing or waiting for
Yeah.
the files to render and things like that. So no, I appreciate it. I love your show. Thank you so much for getting it on the air. I'm really excited for season 2 and all the stuff that happens in between. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, we'll have to have you back again. And
Absolutely. I'm
getting ready
always
for
here.
season 2. And in the meantime, thank you guys for tuning into this special episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. It's always nice to do a show with a lovely guest on a Saturday, which for us is actually Wednesday. You guys have a great day. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.